Where is the hope that we will actually eventually overcome racism? Aya Maria, what do you think?
Okay, that like we are actually that hope. Because when you see so many young people going down to the streets, raising their voices, having conversations just like the one we are having right now, you know that we have a generation that is there to shift the realities that we are used to and to create tangible change. So I think that we, as like our generation, are the sign that we really can overcome racism.
Yeah. And Husna, what do you think? Where's the hope that we will overcome
Just
racism?
to echo what Aya said, as long as the young generation are willing to fight for their rights, fight for equality, I guess there is hope because it always begins from the grassroots and seeing kids, even teenagers, youth coming out in the streets, like
Hmm.
when the Black Lives Matter protest was happening, I was seeing on social media all these people, white, Indian, Asian, everyone coming out together to just fight this racism. Just gives us hope that in the future we will overcome this racism, and I have hope that it won't be there.
Exactly. And Farah, what do you think?
I think, touching on Black Lives Matter, I mean, overcoming racism is also about recognizing it is a movement and it's not just a moment. And I think that work will continue for lifetimes and generations to come. I don't think that it's going to be a situation where one day it never exists because it just takes one bad egg, one, sort of, a bad education or exposure to become that person. So I think it's important that, we need to recognize that, those movements like Black Lives Matter, they do make change. And because now our generation is so digitally native, we're all connected more than we ever were before. And now we have much more exposure to truth if we dig deeper for it. And also those resources don't cost us money, they're free, right? So there are not really any excuses. And obviously Black Lives Matter was just showed us how actually there is power in numbers and we can stand as a world together and put that pressure and accountability on changing the system. We saw so many brands who came out and sort of admitted, perhaps their past was a little bit plagued, but things are going to change. And also for in another sort of sense that it was like more of a conscious awakening that actually for millions of people, their priority is now to learn about this and go beyond surface level commitments and sort of blackout posts. That's not enough, right? It's much deeper than that. So I think those types of things indicate that there is hope that we can sort of overcome this together as a species.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously you mentioned Black Lives Matter as well. And as we all saw, it got to a point, didn't it, where I think, yeah, as you said, a lot of companies were putting out blackout posts and showing their support. But I think one of the issues which I noticed during that period was that, some of these companies which were supporting, which is good, it was terrible. Like there's like terrible diversity in their organizations. As in, if you look quite higher up in senior positions, you wouldn't see a person of color there. So do you feel like maybe diversity at work is an issue as well, or in any industry? Do you think diversity is an issue here, Farah?
I think now more than ever, diversity is a key priority in the boardroom, and it's no longer something that the C-suite can shy away from because there's a sort of changing in generations of leadership, and I think the millennial generation really cares about diversity and is so much more consciously aware of it, having also probably been exposed to what their like fathers and parents and guardians have gone through. So I think particularly in the work that I'm in two heavily male-dominated industries, but also in gender and also in race, music and motorsport. And I find a lot of the conversations now are stemming around that diversity, and not just talking about it, but what can be done. And Lewis Hamilton, obviously a great example of the fact that like he just by his influence he can start a hashtag. That hashtag is adopted by everyone in Formula One. But it also goes deeper than that, and it's about the commission that he sort of started to uncover what are the insights, because obviously it's one thing talking about it, but in the end it's about action. So I do believe now companies are making this a top line priority, and in the end, people are heading more towards sustainable investment, and they're not going to invest in companies that are not showing that sort of respect towards each other.
Exactly. I think because there's been so much talk, people want to see the evidence now. So what signs do you see that things are actually starting to change, Farah?
Well, I think, also, let's take a, sort of bird's eye view. In the end, if we look back over 100 years, I mean, we've come a huge way from those extreme inequalities that Rosa Parks and Malcolm X faced. Today we can go to America and, to some level of degree, all races can coexist peacefully. So I think, it's a huge sign that obviously things are changing way faster, particularly with the internet, than it was in the past. And now, more than ever, it just takes one Google search to find a support system, to find those friends, that stand with you and recognize that it's the right thing to do. And also there are systems in place at work that are being set up. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done, but I think there's all of those things are positive signs that, the tide is changing and the generations really care about not accepting this any longer. Because we've been in pain and war and blood for way too long as a species.
Yeah, exactly. And Husna, what do you think? What signs do you see that things are changing slowly, and we're starting to abolish and slowly eradicate racism in society?
I would say that, there's lots of change happening. For example, in Uganda, I lived in a life where I wasn't discriminated because of my race, and even other people who come from other countries around the world are always welcomed to start their businesses, to come to the schools of Uganda. No one is discriminated, no, because of their race wherever they go. So yes, that's very much thank the government of Uganda, the president, for initiating that program, making sure that such racism isn't happening in Uganda. And also in the sports industry, before Black people weren't allowed to join sport, they weren't allowed to swim. For example, there was a movie I watched about a swim coach who was faster swimmer, and he wasn't allowed to swim. But then when he saw these young kids later on in his life who wanted to try sport, who wanted to try swimming, he encouraged them, and it was just an amazing outcome. The society learned to respect them generally. They were allowed more at swimming galas and stuff like that. So yes, I see that racism is reducing, but it still needs lots of work, like in the diversity in industries and companies. And, I believe that, I've seen the changes.
It's interesting because you spoke about Uganda. Could you just explain what the issue of racism is like over there? Because obviously I've not been to Uganda, so I would assume that it's because it's a predominantly Black country, there wouldn't be racism, but maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yes, because earlier in schools, there wouldn't be Indians in the schools, for example. Whenever a Black kid would see an Indian child, they would be like, I don't want to be your friend. Or maybe when a white kid comes to school and, it would be instead the Black people discriminating the whites. But they learned that it's best to respect them. And now that social media is giving us a perspective of what the white people used to treat us, because I come in a later generation, which I had to first look back on history to see exactly what happened to Black people in the past. So when Black people see that what they're doing is wrong and that what they did to them was wrong as well, they'll all come together and just work together to stop this vice that is racism.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you said that, when you were in younger or in schools some time ago, that maybe some of the Black kids were maybe discriminating against the Asian kids or the white kids who came in. Has that fully changed now? And what's been done to change that in Uganda?
To say it has really, really changed by a lot, because these kids would maybe go to the headmaster or headmistress or maybe one of the teachers, and the teachers would talk to the kids, and lecture them on what is wrong, what is right. And also the kids would try to check whether what the teachers are saying really makes sense. So when they realize that it makes much sense from after being talked to by teachers, or maybe they would invite some people who are human rights activists to talk to the children. I've seen that happen at a few schools, and most schools there isn't any racism, but from the schools that I've had, it has been fought very successfully, and it has almost been fully eradicated.
Wow, that's really refreshing and great to hear, actually. Peace. That's what we love to hear. Aya Maria, what signs do you see that things are changing?
I think that the fact that people are talking more openly about racism and like anti-racism has become an ongoing conversation is a really good sign that things are changing, because like maybe 2 decades ago, people weren't there having the same conversations we are having now. They didn't have those platforms and this open dialogue. So really, I think now social media age, this is more prominent and really feasible. And something else is that today young people are standing up against racism. So racism is really fostered in older generations, like in our parents and our grandparents, and we see that all over the world. However, we as young people are becoming less and less racist. So whenever we see like older people acting in a racist manner, we are the ones to stand up to them and to tell them, no, why are you discriminating against that person? We're equal, we're human, they did nothing bad to you. So really working it from the ground up, so from our generation to older generations, so we're teaching them that while they taught us racism. So I think like shifting the balance is something really good.
Do you know what? You've just said something so key. Yes, the younger generation are actually becoming less and less racist, but it's actually the older generations who still would make racist remarks. Like, what do we do as young people to like educate the older people and say, look, you can't say that? Because I feel like sometimes the older generation can be ever so stubborn because, they believe what they believe, and they believe that, I was around in all those times. How would you approach an older person and say, look, I don't think what you said is right? Without being patronizing, of course, and showing respect at the same time.
Yes, I think it's really tough. Like older generations are really stubborn, especially the boomers. So as Gen Z, we sometimes find it hard to stand up to them and to really show them the world as we see it. But at the same time, if we do not take on like racist behavior, for example, if I'm a college student, I have classes with people from different nationalities, different ethnicities, different color of skin. So if I have those people who are my friends and then I bring them home, we're just sitting there in my living room and there's people from everywhere, from every religion, from everything. And we're just there and my parents see that we're all interacting, that they're fun people, they are polite, and they are just like me. So this is one way that I would be able to show them that, okay, we're actually the same and there's no reason to discriminate against them. So it really starts within the family, at the dinner table, and then it grows to society and then the world.